Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 200 Years of Hamilton County, the captivating historical podcast that has taken you on a time-traveling journey through the remarkable stories, extraordinary individuals, and significant locations that have shaped the fascinating county of Hamilton here in Indiana. I'm your host, Adam Grubb, along with the talented storyteller and historian, David Heighway. David, we're throwing the script out the window for this one. This is our last episode on this series of 200 Years in Hamilton County, and we're gonna break some myths. We're going to bust some myths up here. There's a lot that happens in the county and in the circles of chatter, both the literal chatter on Facebook and those that are happening elsewhere on porches all across, where they say, did you know this? Did you know that? So we're going to go right to the source. We're going to go to you, and we're going to find out if these things are true or not. All right. Okay. And I'm going to walk through this list, and these are things that we've heard, folklore and myths around Hamilton County. 200 years, you're going to hear a lot of different stories. You're going to hear a lot of different things. And you're going to tell us if that's false or true. And I'm hoping to hear some extra stories around that. So we'll start with folklores and myths in Hamilton County here. Strawtown was the first choice for the first state capital. Is that true or false?
That is actually false, but you can see where the source came from.
Strawtown.
Yes.
Yes. That didn't take me but a half second to get there.
Okay. What it was is that when they chose the state capital, Indianapolis, in 1820, they considered a lot of different spots. They actually met first at William Connor's house here in Hamilton County, then eventually moved down to Indianapolis, well, what would be Indianapolis, McCormick's Creek, McCormick's Cabin there. But through the years, there's been this myth that Strawtown was the one that was going to do it, and the only reason why it wasn't chosen is because the commissioner that was supposed to make the special vote was out fishing that day. Oh. So, no, that didn't happen. We have the meeting records. We have the meeting minutes. We know exactly what happened when. But the thing is, there is a tiny, tiny kernel there of something that makes sense, because Strawtown was a thriving community when Indianapolis was just ink on a map. And so what it was is that it didn't make the short list, but I imagine the name did come up in the conversation saying, hey, we need to designate a state capital. Here's Strawtown. It's actually on the intersection of a couple major trails. It's on the river. Why don't we think about that? And somebody else said, okay, their first business there was a distillery. Their second business was a horse racing track. That's not what we want for our state capital.
I disagree.
So
Strawtown and Chief Straw. And what does that mean? And is that true or false?
That is false. I've run into some heat because of that. What it was is that the mythology is that the Strawtown got its name because of a Delaware Indian chief living there named Chief Straw. And people got this idea, of course, from Anderson, which was named after Chief Anderson, and it happened at other spots there. So one of the problems is that we were asked about this at one point in time, and somebody asked, well, what are the primary sources? And so as we looked for those primary sources, we realized there were none. And further went into it, and we found no references to any sort of Chief Straw whatsoever. As a matter of fact, found a reference from 1850 that said the town was named for a house with a roof made of straw.
Which sounds more plausible, yet probably also false.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. It could have been made out of river reeds or something like that.
We're breaking myths here in Hamilton County. These are folklores and myths, and we're getting to the truth of the matter with our friend here, David. Let's stay in Strawtown, okay? Mm-hmm. This seems to be a general theme here of this episode. Strawtown and the circus. Now, apparently, the Strawtown is taking credit for the circus coming to town and being a part of the Hamilton County. Is that true or false?
That is actually true.
We got one, Strawtown. We got one.
And I have such fun with it because there are older members of the Strawtown community that say, oh, I've heard about that, they had circuses on my farm and there were elephants and things. And I say, yeah, that's a very strong possibility because we do know that there were circus people who ended up living in the area and there were circuses that went over there. So that one is a true one.
Now let's talk about Cicero Creek and Cicero Laughlin.
Mm-hmm. That is another one that actually everybody thought was folklore, but turns out might be true. Because the fellow who actually was the surveyor for the early survey of Indiana and Hamilton County was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Laughlin. And the story is that a member of his team was named Cicero and fell in the water. And that's why they named Cicero Creek the way it was. Well, we don't have actual evidence, but we do have his survey notes from the time period. And we find that at one point in time when he's measuring, doing the survey work along what became Cicero Creek, it's actually down in the area where 32 crosses over Cicero Creek. There's literally a marginal note in the notes in the record itself that says, we are going to call this Cicero's Creek. And since we do know he did in fact have a son named Cicero, there is a plausible truth to the fact that Dad was busy working the thing and his son just wasn't paying attention and took a header and ended up in a river. And so that has possibilities there.
Well, I'm going to say it's true because I think it's better true.
Okay.
Hamilton County and John Dillinger. Now, every little town in the state of Indiana wants to showcase their connection with John Dillinger, but Hamilton County does actually have a connection to John Dillinger. True or false?
We'll call it sort of true.
Okay, we're changing the name of the game to true, false, or sort of true.
Actually, it's more false than anything
there
else.
we go.
He never really stopped here officially. What he was in a traffic accident up in Adams Township, up on what's today's Highway 31. We have all sorts of records about this. There are newspaper accounts of it, things like that. So, we definitely know he traveled through the area going from Chicago down to his home in Indianapolis.
But no bank robberies, no murders, no
We
shootouts,
were nothing for
nothing.
them. No escapes from the jail.
He got in a wreck, right, on
that was
31. Atlanta and Rhodes Hotel is a brothel and speakeasy.
Yeah.
True or false?
False. Completely
You
false.
said that very quickly.
That's because I have been dealing with that one for years. And it's Rhodes Hotel, where all of that occurred, was actually just a stopping point. Atlanta was actually a fairly successful community. This was a place where traveling salesmen would stop, and they would just spend the night there. We have a photograph of the people who ran it, sitting on their front porch, Newton Rhodes and his family. Newton Rhodes was a solid, sturdy old citizen who played tuba in the town band. He did not run a brothel. He did not run a speakeasy or anything like that. So the Rhodes Hotel was actually just an ordinary little community hotel that somewhere along the lines, somebody decided to start adding some history or some
And
story.
to be fair, though, you can't really trust a tuba player. So we don't really know what happened there.
Not my choice.
Clare and Lagoon Lodge, which is Riverbend Campground, also a speakeasy. True or false?
True.
That is true.
And we have eyewitnesses. We have family member descendants. This was in the late 1920s, early 1930s. It had been built as a large mansion for a family. That was a resort area at that point in time. They sold it off. This Lagoon Lodge moved in as a place to eat. And we actually have newspaper accounts of busting people there for illegal liquor.
All right, let's continue on with Noblesville and Josiah Polk's cabbages. So I don't even know what this story could be, and I hope it's true just because of the headline alone. Noblesville and Josiah Polk's cabbages. False or true?
False. Sorry. What it was is that the historian that we talk a lot about, Augustus Finch Schurz, in his history, literally put a story in there saying that Josiah Polk, the reason that Noblesville got its name is that Josiah Polk was engaged to a woman named Lavinia Noble, and she was coming to town to accept him in marriage and live here and things like that. But when she got off the stagecoach, she looked over at his house and he'd planted a garden with her name spelled out in vegetables. And she was so horrified by this, she turned around, left, and went away. Now, there's actually maybe a grain of truth there, because a very powerful political family in Indiana at the time was the Noble family. Noah Noble, who eventually became governor, James Noble, who was senator at the time, and they had a sister named Lavinia. And we have a feeling that what this story is growing from, we don't know where the hell the vegetables came from, but the story is probably growing from the fact that Josiah Polk was trying to get involved, work his way into the power structure there, and was basically told to get lost. So for one reason or another, that's probably the root of the thing. And then why Finch Schurz decided to go with the vegetables, I have no idea.
So we were talking about the political connections here in Noblesville and in Hamilton County. Another political connection, potentially. Noblesville, this is facts or myths, myth-busting folklore, true or false. Noblesville, Teddy Roosevelt, and Harrell House.
That is...
True or false?
Well, it's false, but once again, it probably has roots in a real thing. Teddy Roosevelt stopped here in 1902 on a speaking tour. He was badly injured at the time, but if you know anything about history and Teddy Roosevelt, Injury did not slow the man down. So what it was, he'd been in a carriage accident, and his leg was badly swollen, and it was literally swelling. But he went out, he gave a speech. We have pictures of him. Well, just up the street from there is a house that belongs to a doctor's family named the Harrells. And for years, they had a bit of a myth saying that Teddy Roosevelt stopped in here in the Harrells. You know, he stopped in the house and saw some stuff. I don't know if he stopped in the house. He wouldn't have had time. But I would imagine that once he got done with his speech and was doing, handshakes and things like that, the doctors kind of said to him, you need to get to a hospital right now. The Harrells were actually very, very good doctors. They'd been trained in Europe, so they were very skilled, and they probably told him, get that fixed.
True or false? Grave robbers in Fishers.
Very true. We have newspaper accounts, we have court records, all of that stuff. A guy by the name of Wade Hampton, or Hamp West, was one of the key ones. Actually, in the main burial ground down in Fishers there was a shootout in the cemetery over a corpse. You had two rival gangs that came there and started shooting at each other to try and get this valuable corpse. Actually, one of the gang members was killed, and I suspect they sold these to the hospitals. Hospital got a 2-for-1 deal that night.
Allisonville Road, tunneled, and the UGRR, the Underground Railroad.
What it was is there are, in fact, tunnels under Allisonville Road coming from a lot of the houses that were along there. And people used to ask me, oh, are those Underground Railroad? And I'm saying, well, no, those houses were built in like 1910. That was long after that occurred there. But the tunnels are there. They are real things. They actually exist. So we've been trying to figure out what it is other than that. There was first some thought that maybe it was for bootleggers, which is not an impossibility. However, what we kind of suspect is that it's a primitive sort of air conditioning, that they can draw, these go down to the riverbank along the river, and these can draw air, the cooler air from the riverbank by maybe a series of fans or something like that, bring it up to the house and at least get some sort of cooler air coming in. That's a theory. We don't have any facts on that one.
All right, true or false? Carmel and Native Americans.
There were actually Native Americans in the Carmel area. As a matter of fact, they owned property near what is today literally the center of Carmel. However, in the 1920s, there was somebody who decided they were going to make a memorial to these Native Americans and literally got a used cigar store Indian, a tin teepee, and a gas pipe with a hole in it to make an eternal flame. It was really ridiculous. It did not last.
It doesn't sound like it should have. All right, true or false? We're breaking myths here on 200 years in Hamilton County. Germantown Church under Geist Reservoir.
This is one of the things. There actually was a community on Geist, actually under Geist, called Germantown. It was built right at the bend in Fall Creek right there. And when Geist bought the property, when the water company bought the property, there were buildings there. Now, the lore, the myth is that kind of like there was a church there, and when the water gets down to a certain level, you can see the steeple, and sometimes you can hear the bell ringing or something like that. No, that did not happen. There were buildings there. Germantown is now, the remnants are under Geist Reservoir. And but what it is that when the water company moved in, they did not mess around. This was in the 1920s to the 1940s. They took a bulldozer to that town, and there is nothing left but a few remnants of fieldstones and things like that.
David Heighway, county historian, storyteller. David, I can't tell you how fun it's been over these weeks to sit with you and talk with you about the 200 years. There are thousands and thousands of stories that are in your head that are out there. You speak all over the county. You speak to school systems. You speak to leadership groups, and you speak to companies and corporations. You have so much in there. It's been a real treat to hear just a portion of the history of Hamilton County and this great place that we all live in. Thank you for your time and for your education, and hopefully you've all enjoyed the 200 years in 15 minutes of Hamilton County history. I'm Adam Grubb. He's David Heighway. Thanks so much for watching, listening, and being part of this incredible journey. And here is to 200 more years.